We're going to start the notes now for Chapter 10, and this video is going to be on Chapter 10, Section 1. So the standards and objectives there, you can read those. We're going to discuss how primary, secondary, and tertiary economic activities have specific functions and spatial patterns. Standard number 12, explain ways geographic features and environmental issues have influenced historical events. And this is going to be about the history of Mexico. Discuss the history of ancient Mexico, how modern-day Mexico originated, and analyze trade with oil manufacturing in Mexico with things like NAFTA and now with the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. So let's go ahead and look at some of these notes here. You have first Quetzalcoatl, which was the god worshipped by the Toltec and the Aztec people. Now, when Hernando Cortez and his band of conquistadors arrived in Mexico in 1519, people believed that Cortez was this god Quetzalcoatl. The legend was that he was a pale-skinned god and that he would come back in his ship in order to lead the people. And so they believed that this pale-skinned god was Hernando Cortez. And even though he wasn't, he kind of plays into this a little bit. Modern-day Mexico was originally home to many tribes of Native Americans. So we're kind of getting into this with the Spanish conquest, which is when the Spanish arrived in Mexico and changed the way of life. Now, you need to know that Tenochtitlan was the city of the Aztecs to become Mexico City. So these first few slides right here are just a few important notes that you need to know. The Spanish conquest, this is when the Spanish were going to come in. They're going to take over in different parts of Mexico, South America, Central America. And this was the name of the city before it became Mexico City. And this is a picture of what it possibly could have looked like, an artist's rendition of what it possibly could look like. For centuries after the invasion of the Spanish, Mexico was a Spanish colony. And so before we get into all this, let me talk first about the Spanish conquest in Mexico. Cortez, basically what happens is they believe he's the god Quetzalcoatl, and so he comes in, he uses that to get leverage to get into the city. Once in there, they take the king, King Moctezuma II, hostage and put him in a back room. Well, people find out what's going on. They start killing people. They wind up running the Spanish out of Tenochtitlan, and they get reinforcements, come back, and just take over this area in here, completely taking over this ancient empire that had been here since the people migrated down from the Bering Strait land bridge. So, back to this. So that's what happens with the Spanish conquest. After the invasion by the Spanish, Mexico became a Spanish colony. It had abundance in natural resources such as gold and silver, making it a large prize. This is what people are coming out west looking for. As they come and they colonize these areas, they're looking for gold. They're looking for gold and silver and different things that they can use to make themselves and their countries richer. Mexico achieved independence from Spain under Agustín de Iturbide, which took over and allowed Mexico to achieve their independence. That's the reason why they're not under Spanish government today. Both under Spanish rule and as an independent, land distribution was unequally distributed. The rich landowners owned most of the land and the peasants worked the land. A new constitution was adopted in 1917 and redistributed nearly half of Mexico's farmland to peasants. And so basically the rich people took all the land to start off with. They had all of it. The poor people didn't have hardly anything. But when a new constitution was formed in 1917, it allowed land to be redistributed to the poor people as well. The Industrial Revolutionary Party was a political party that came to power in 1929. In 1997, two parties that were opposed to the Industrial Revolutionary Party won a large number of seats in Congress. And in 2000, the National Action Party candidate, Vicente Fox, won the presidency, and for the first time in 71 years, they lost control. So this kind of tells you a little bit about the political system in Mexico. Now, we're not going to get very deep into anything with the Mexican history because we move on from Mexico to Central America in the next section. But right now, we're just kind of hitting on some important things. Before the arrival of the Spanish, Mexico was full of advanced native cultures. According to the legend, the Aztec people arrived at the site of the empire about 1200 AD from the northern descendants of Mexico. Again, this goes along with the belief process of people coming over from the Bering Strait land bridge. As they crossed over and they started coming down into Canada, North America, and down into Mexico and South America, it was about this period of time when we believed this started to happen. The Aztecs built their capital of Tenochtitlan along with temples, palaces, gardens. They would grow food on islands and lakes surrounding the city. So they had all this wonderful things they was building, these temples and everything that the Aztec people built. When Cortez and the Spanish defeated the Aztecs, they destroyed most of Tenochtitlan and built Mexico City on its ruins. So where Mexico City is built today is where the ancient city originally was. All projects are done in Mexico City and more things are built. They keep finding Aztec ruins and relics. And because of this, you have to have an archaeologist on site so that you have someone there that can see if you're digging up anything important. The Spanish brought their language and their Catholic faith to Mexico, where it still is dominant today. And so the Spanish brought their Spanish language, the Catholic faith, and these two things are still very dominant in Mexico, even though Mexico is not under control of Spain today. Even though the Spanish brought much of their customs, the heritage of the natives still are evident. The name Mexico, for example, comes from Mexica, which is the older name for the Aztecs. Mestizo is a people of mixed Spanish and Native American heritage, which repopulated and spread all over the Mexican region. And so we see that some of the ancient culture is still there today. It's still applicable today, but it's just a mix of that with the Spanish, with modern Mexican culture as well. In the 20th century, Mexican painting took on a public form of art. Many of these paintings were done in the form of murals, along with some portraits that would blend European and Native American influences. So you see that there's a type of artwork which is murals. Murals are those big paintings that go over a wide area of like a building or a wall or something. It kind of shows you images of things. A lot of times if you go in Mexican restaurants, they're going to have murals on the walls of like people farming and maybe some of the ancient Aztec culture and things like that. And so it's still part of the culture today. And this is an example of a mural. It kind of shows something that's going on here. The Native Americans created beautiful temples and public buildings. Many of these temples were in the forms of pyramids, much like the way that the Egyptians did. As the Spanish took over, they still built beautiful architecture such as cathedrals. So you see, the ancient world, the Native Americans would build temples. They would build these huge public buildings and all these beautiful things. And the Spanish, when they would take over, would build beautiful cathedrals and Catholic churches and things like that. Here's examples. There on the left is a Aztec ruins of a pyramid that was made there, a step pyramid. And you see at the top of it, this right here would be where the temple part is. It's up on the top. That's where they would offer sacrifices and things like that. And this is a Catholic church today. And you see the intricate design of the rock work on the sides and things like that. Mexico continues to struggle with two major economic factors. These are the gap between the rich and poor and trying to become a modern industrial economy. Many Mexicans moved to cities looking for jobs. These jobs help to close the gap between the rich and the poor. The population of Mexico is young and growing. So there's a young, growing population in Mexico that they move to the cities looking for jobs. They're trying to close the income gap between the rich and the poor. And they do this by getting jobs, working, and building lives for themselves. Mexico's economy includes a large industry based on oil reserves. In recent years, manufacturing has become a large part of their economy. And these are in the form of maquiladoras, which are factories in Mexico that assembled imported materials into finished products. A lot of these are on the border because that way you got to carry them deep into Mexico. They would import these materials, make finished products, and then send them right back to the United States or send them wherever they're going to go. Now, just a few things about trade agreements. NAFTA is the former trade agreement between the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Stands for North American Free Trade Agreement. And it's a trade agreement between the United States, uh, Canada, and Mexico, the North American countries. The new agreement made in 2018 is called the USMCA for the United States, Mexico, and Canada Agreement. This is what was put out by Donald Trump. He said he believed that, in his words, that NAFTA was a disaster and that there needed to be something else brought in. And so they issued up the USMCA. And so you see here, let me move my picture. There's just a couple of memes I found. This first one is from the 2016 election. It says, "Our jobs have fled to Mexico and other places. I'm going to renegotiate NAFTA, and if we can't make a good deal, we'll make a new deal." And then it shows here, it's a meme of Donald Trump saying, "This trade deal is much better." And it has the flags of Mexico, United States, and Canada. So that is just a little bit about NAFTA and the USMCA. Safety is one challenge that the people of Mexico deal with. There's a lot of gang violence, drug cartels, things like that are in many parts of Mexico. Many Mexicans travel to the United States in search of a better life, and many come with the appropriate documentation, but many do not, which causes international debate on how to deal with the borders. This is a debate that goes on all the time about what do we do about undocumented immigrants and things like that. Mexico also suffers from high unemployment, and much of this has to do with the lack of education. Although in recent years, the amount of Mexicans receiving education is growing. So you see a growing number of education in Mexico. So that leads us to the end of this section. We discussed ancient history of Mexico with the Aztecs and Hernan Cortez. We examined modern day how modern day Mexico originated. The Spanish took over. They fought they got their independence from Spain, forming Mexico. And NAFTA and the USMCA. We discussed trade along with manufacturing in Mexico with the maquiladoras, and NAFTA and the USMCA. So that is all for section 1.